To say goodbye to Jenny, I want to welcome in the co-founder of LikeFolio.com, Landon Swan, so we can join the conversation here. Landon, if I recall, UPS is kind of consistently, at least from a consumer perspective, outperforming FedEx in terms of your guys' data. But I believe Jenny said somewhere around 93 to 95% was roughly all of the kind of the on-time shipping for these companies. To me, that's still, and maybe I'm just a glass half empty guy, that's still one in 15 to 20 packages that is not on time. And I'm sure those are the people who are going to Twitter to talk about their experience. So how much does that weigh on something like consumer sentiment for these type of companies?
It's huge. And, when we look at the consumer happiness for UPS versus FedEx, there's a stark difference. And I think that, looking at it from the glass, I'm a glass half full generally type of guy. But when you look at numbers like 93 and 95, you got to flip those and say, okay, what percentage of customers aren't happy? And the difference between 5 and 7 is quite a big difference. That's 40% more people who are frustrated. And so I think you got to flip it on that angle and
Great
look.
point.
And that is why UPS is doing so much better. So we look at consumer happiness. It's about 58% happy with UPS, which is not a great number, of course, but FedEx is down around 42. So that is, with these kind of companies, and Kevin, we always talk about this, who's going on social media to talk about their packages. Sometimes people are thrilled with getting something on time. A lot of people are complaining, of course. This is almost like airlines. People are far more likely to complain, but still the sample size is definitely large enough to get a good reading on where people prefer to get packages from. And UPS is doing much, much better. There was a little bit there in 2017 where they were closing in on each other. UPS was dropping, FedEx was pulling up, but they have since separated quite drastically, especially when you look at how they handled the pandemic and how they handled getting things out on time. Both of them took a huge dip as volume went up tremendously. I don't think either company was prepared for that, and rightfully so. How could they predict that? But they've bounced back. UPS bounced back much more. And so I think that right now you can say that consumers generally like UPS a little bit better. When we look at their usage data, which of course LikeFolio is focused on B2C, it's all about how many consumers are talking about using these. And so we don't get the full picture. We don't get international. We don't get B2B, and we don't have any expenses going into this. So this is not one of LikeFolio's most predictive companies, either UPS or FedEx. But I can say that just on a usage level, Jenny was talking about numbers around the +8, +9, +11% year over year. This quarter, we're looking at +7% year over year. So we're largely in line with what analysts are expecting, a little bit lower though. And I think a lot of that is, they expected a big holiday quarter. Of course, that's when people buy gifts online and ship them. But there wasn't a ton of carryover. You can see that monster Q2, that big bar, and then a very large Q3 that was still 50% year over year higher. But then it didn't really carry over. So a lot of times on this show, we talk about changes in consumer behavior. And I don't think that the pandemic and the quarantine really had a huge shift on consumer behavior when it comes to buying things online. I think that people use that as a way to get through those months. And now as things are starting to get back to normal, it's about where things were before. Again, about +7% year over year. So that's a good number. It's just not a monster number. It's just not something where everyone has changed from buying in at the store to shipping online. And so we see a potential slight disappointment on their earnings report. Nothing major, but overall strong numbers coming from UPS. I think that they're largely expected, especially with the stock up about 50% year over year compared to where it was, right before the pandemic started. So this is clearly a winner, even though they may not have been prepared for it. They now are executing very well, and I think that analysts are expecting a really big number, and I think they're going to get a big number.
Yeah, Landon, this is a tricky one because, these aren't, this name, UPS, it's 20 some dollars off of its highest level, but it has had an unbelievable run up to this level. But it's hard for me, and we need your data to help us to get a feel for, do you see, I see your numbers, and it looks like, the last two bar, or the not the bar that's the light shaded one, but the two previous before that one. Those look significantly higher than where they were running in the past, right? Obviously, not the spike, the big number, but are we settling in at that new higher number? Because if we are, that's pretty good for this name. I mean, I want to know, am I reading this right? Are
Sure.
the two bars ahead of this quarter, are those resting considerably higher than it was in the past? And do you expect this quarter to get up to that level? Am I reading that right? I need some help with your data, actually.
Sure, sir. So the very, very far right bar, the one that's a little bit different color, that is the
Yeah.
current quarter that's on pace for, right?
Yes.
So that's basically January. That's the one that's going to end at the end of March and be reported in April. That one is basically flat year over year. That is kind of suggesting to us that things are getting back to normal, which for a shipper is not great news because things, when they were not normal, everyone was shipping and buying online. The next bar on the left, the one on the left side of that red square, that is the quarter that's about to be reported. So that is Q4. That is up 7% year over year. The other two were the COVID spike. Those were out of control. Those were just off the charts as far as year over year numbers. The Q3 and Q2 of last year were not supposed to be anywhere near what they were. So the quarter that's being reported is about up 7% year over year. And then if you look at just how January's gone so far, it's largely back to normal. It's flat year over year. So I think that the COVID high, the quarantine high, as far as shipping data goes, is resting. It's coming back down to normal. And we see that in UPS, but we actually on FedEx, we see it. FedEx doing a little bit better. We're seeing more data from people using FedEx. So that's a little bit of an interesting dynamic, but still the happiness is there. I think clearly when people, if they have a choice on shippers, and often they do not, when they have a choice, they prefer UPS. There was a survey recently asked people which shipper do you trust more, and it was about 2/3. It was 65% UPS, 35% FedEx, and that aligns very closely with our happiness data. So people are much more in favor of UPS. I know I personally will always pick UPS, and you guys may not know this, but there are, I think, maybe 5 big hubs in the United States for UPS. Louisville, Kentucky is the global air hub. So if we ever have an option to buy something and get it shipped UPS, we'll get it faster than anyone in the country. It's amazing. So I live 20 minutes from the global hub. I'll always pick UPS. You guys, I think there's one about an hour and a half outside of Chicago in Rockford. So you guys are not bad, but it's UPS for Louisville is just where it's at. It's fantastic.
Landon, we got to run, but I got one quick question, just like a 1 or 2 word answer if you can, or as short as possible. Does your general e-commerce data keep up with this trend? Or are you still seeing strength there? And maybe we're just getting a little bit less people talking about the shippers.
No, I think that e-commerce is definitely doing well. It's a little bit of a behavior change. It's coming back down to normal, though, which we're seeing through this data.